The stark corridors of the interstellar research facility Echo 7 were mostly quiet, save for the occasional hum of machinery and the distant clatter of a loose panel somewhere in the sector that housed the human staff. The facility, a joint venture between Earth and several allied extraterrestrial races, thrived on the outer edges of the known galaxy, a testament to the shared thirst for knowledge and unity in the face of the vast unknown. Among the myriad of alien species that called Echo 7 home, Ilara was particularly notable. A member of the Veskari, a race distinguished by their iridescent skin that shimmered with each emotion and thought. She stood out not just for her striking appearance, but also for her insatiable curiosity. This trait had led her to become a leading xenobiologist, a role that offered her access to a variety of species, technologies, and most intriguingly, substances. It was a regular day filled with routine checks and data analysis until Ilara stumbled upon a small, unmarked vial in one of the lesser-used labs. The vial was subtly hidden behind other chemical compounds in a cold storage unit specifically labeled for high-risk experimental substances. It wasn't her project, nor was it related to any of her current studies, but the lack of labeling piqued her interest. Protocol dictated that she report it, yet curiosity urged her otherwise. With a cautious hand, she reached for the vial. The liquid inside was clear, almost mundane, but her advanced training reminded her that appearances in chemical compounds were often deceiving. She decided to analyze the substance using the spectrometer, hoping to uncover its composition quietly without causing unnecessary alarm. As she prepared the sample, the lab door hissed open, startling her. It was Dr. Jensen, a human military advisor attached to the project for what the higher-ups called security assessments. He was tall and had a sternness that seemed permanently etched into his features. "Dr. Ilara, what are we examining today?" he asked, eyeing the vial with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Just running some routine tests," Ilara replied, her voice steady despite the sudden adrenaline rush. "Found this misplaced in the storage. Thought it might be important." Dr. Jensen nodded, though his eyes lingered on the vial. "Be careful with unknown samples. Some of these compounds are part of joint military projects, highly confidential, and sometimes dangerous." "I'll keep that in mind," Ilara assured, turning her attention back to the spectrometer. The analysis revealed nothing conclusive, just a series of complex compounds that didn't match any known database entries. Her curiosity now mixed with a hint of concern, Ilara decided to test the pH balance, a harmless procedure, or so she thought. In her meticulous process, she accidentally knocked the vial. It teetered perilously for a heartbeat before falling. Instinctively, she caught it, but not before a few drops splashed onto her exposed wrist. The effect was immediate and intense. A warm rush flooded through her, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Panic set in as she realized she had just exposed herself to an unknown substance, potentially a highly experimental military serum. Her skin began to glow, a bright, pulsing red that indicated distress in her species. Ilara's heart raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of scientific curiosity and fear. What had she just absorbed? What was this feeling overwhelming her senses? As the sensation intensified, she knew she needed help. But how could she explain this? What would happen if the humans found out she had been exposed to one of their military secrets? Amidst these swirling thoughts, one thing became clear. She had to find out what was in that serum, and she had to control whatever was happening to her body before it was too late. Ilara staggered out of the lab, her every step radiating the internal chaos caused by the serum. The once familiar corridors of Echo 7 seemed to warp around her, pulsating with her heightened senses. Lights blazed too brightly, and the ambient hum of the station's life support system swelled to an overpowering drone in her sensitive ears. With her mind racing as fast as her heart, Ilara knew her first stop must be the medical bay. She needed to understand the physiological changes occurring within her before she could even attempt to reverse them. As she hurried along, the glowing red of her skin shifted to a deep blue, signaling her fear and distress to anyone who might see her. Dr. Helsrit, the station's chief medical officer and a fellow Veskari, was updating medical records when Ilara burst in. His eyes widened in alarm at the sight of her luminescent skin. "Ilara, what happened?" he asked, rushing to her side. "I accidentally came into contact with a human military serum. I don't know what it's doing to me," she confessed, her breath short and shallow. Without hesitation, Dr. Helsrit led her to a diagnostic bed and began scanning her with various medical instruments, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The readings are erratic. Your biosignatures are off the charts. It's like your body is in a state of hyperarousal. We need to isolate the active compounds and figure out an antidote." Ilara nodded, trying to focus on controlling her breathing and her racing thoughts. The medical bay was a swirl of activity as Dr. Helsrit worked, running simulations and testing samples of her blood against known antidotes. Meanwhile, news of her exposure spread through Echo 7. Dr. Jensen, upon hearing the incident, arrived at the medical bay, his expression a mix of concern and annoyance. "Dr. Ilara, this serum was part of a classified project aimed at enhancing soldier performance in combat. It's designed to heighten sensory perception and reaction times exponentially. You must understand this was never meant for non-human physiology." His words only fueled Ilara's worry. An enhancement for humans could be a poison for others. She watched the data flickering across the screens, each new figure and graph deepening her unease. "We need to synthesize an inhibitor," Dr. Helsrit declared, breaking her fixation on the screens. "But it will take time and we don't fully understand the long-term effects yet." Ilara felt a surge of determination amidst the turmoil. "Let me help," she insisted. "Perhaps there's something in the Veskari medical archives that could give us a lead." Together, they combed through ancient texts and medical databases, searching for anything that might counteract the effects of the serum. Hours slipped by as Ilara's condition fluctuated between states, each more intense than the last. Finally, they stumbled upon a potential solution. A rare herb used in Veskari traditional medicine known to stabilize metabolic extremes. "It's a long shot," Dr. Helsrit cautioned, "but it's the best chance we have." Preparations for synthesizing the inhibitor began immediately, with Ilara assisting despite her condition. As they worked, she couldn't help but wonder about the implications of what had happened. Her accidental exposure had revealed a critical oversight in the handling and testing of cross-species substances at the facility. The clock was ticking, not just for finding an antidote, but for ensuring such an incident never occurred again. Ilara felt the weight of her species' representation on her shoulders, and she was determined to rise to the challenge, fueled by a blend of Veskari resilience and a newfound urgency to safeguard all inhabitants of Echo 7 from the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition. In the depths of Echo 7's botanical research wing, Dr. Helsrit and Ilara worked with fervent intensity. Cultivating the rare Veskari herb under artificial conditions meant to mimic the biomes of their homeworld. The herb, traditionally slow to mature, was subjected to an accelerated growth protocol, bathing in bioluminescent light and enriched nutrients. As the plant thrived, Ilara's symptoms oscillated between debilitating sensory overload and brief moments of lucid clarity. Each episode revealed new layers of her condition, insights that she meticulously documented. This information became invaluable, guiding their efforts in synthesizing the inhibitor. Dr. Jensen hovered nearby, his presence a constant reminder of the military's interest in the situation. "How soon until we can test the inhibitor?" he pressed, his gaze locked on the vibrant green leaves now ready for harvest. "Soon," Dr. Helsrit replied cautiously, "but it needs to be exact. We can't risk further exacerbating her condition with a flawed antidote." Ilara, despite her growing fatigue, assisted in extracting the essence of the herb. The process was delicate, requiring precision that her fluctuating condition barely allowed. They distilled the essence into a pure, concentrated serum, its verdant hue a stark contrast to the clear, menacing vial that started it all. Testing the concoction, they found it interacted with samples of the military serum in promising ways, seemingly neutralizing some of its more aggressive properties. Hope flickered in Ilara's eyes as she watched the reactions unfold under microscopic analysis. "Let's proceed with the human trials," Dr. Jensen suggested, already considering the broader applications. "No," Ilara countered firmly, her voice steady despite her condition. "We tested on me first. I won't have anyone else suffer this without knowing it's safe." The tension in the room spiked, but Dr. Helsrit nodded in agreement. They prepared a dose for Ilara, monitoring her vitals as they administered the inhibitor. The effects were almost immediate. The overwhelming rush that had plagued her began to ebb, replaced by a soothing calm that spread through her veins. Relief washed over the team, but it was short-lived. As Ilara's symptoms subsided, new questions emerged. The serum's potential had been proven, albeit accidentally, and the implications were vast. If it could be adapted safely for human use, it could revolutionize their capabilities. However, ethical dilemmas loomed large. The serum was powerful, too powerful perhaps for unrestricted use. Discussions began in hushed tones among the station's leadership, debates punctuated by both scientific curiosity and moral reservations. Meanwhile, Ilara, now stable and increasingly alert, began to delve into the origins of the serum that had so dramatically impacted her life. Her access to the research databases and her familiarity with the station's less frequented archives provided her with clues. She uncovered discrepancies in the project logs and irregularities in the security protocols. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that the serum's existence was no mere oversight. Someone had been moving it through Echo 7 with a level of secrecy that suggested something more than routine military enhancements. As she pieced together the data, Ilara found evidence of unauthorized shipments to and from the station, all linked to a shadowy figure within the military's research division, a figure who had gone to great lengths to keep their activities hidden. Armed with this information, Ilara knew she had to act. But first, she needed allies. Trusting Dr. Helsrit implicitly, she shared her findings. Together, they decided to approach Dr. Jensen. His reaction would tell them much about his true role in this affair, and perhaps guide their next steps in navigating the murky waters of interstellar politics and ethics. In the quiet confines of a secured conference room, Ilara and Dr. Helsrit confronted Dr. Jensen with the evidence of unauthorized activities connected to the serum. Papers and data pads were spread across the table, each document a thread in the web of secrecy that had entangled the station. Dr. Jensen's initial reaction was defensive, his posture rigid and eyes narrowing. "You think I had a part in this?" he asked, his voice a mixture of incredulity and offense. But as Ilara walked him through the evidence, his demeanor shifted from defensive to concerned, and finally to gravely serious. "This goes deeper than I realized," he admitted, scrutinizing the documents with a new perspective. "We knew the serum had potential, but I had no idea it was being moved under the table like this." Together they pieced together the puzzle. The unauthorized shipments, the erased logs, the cryptic communications, all pointed to a clandestine operation aimed at developing and possibly deploying the serum beyond the oversight of the official channels. "I need to take this up the chain," Dr. Jensen declared. "If what you found is accurate, we're dealing with a significant breach of both trust and protocol." With Jensen's acknowledgement of the issue, Ilara felt a cautious sense of progress. Yet she knew the real challenge lay ahead in exposing the full extent of the conspiracy without endangering the station or its inhabitants. As Jensen initiated secure communications with his superiors, Ilara and Dr. Helsrit returned to the lab, now turned makeshift command center, to plan their next moves. They needed to safeguard the serum's formula and ensure that the inhibitor they developed remained under strict control until they could determine its safety and ethical implications for broader use. Amidst their strategizing, an encrypted message arrived for Ilara. The sender was unknown, and the message was cryptic, yet pointed. "Stop digging, or the consequences will reach beyond the stars." The threat was clear and ominous. Someone was monitoring their discoveries and was ready to intervene to keep the serum's existence under wraps. The implications were chilling, but rather than deterring her, the message only fueled Ilara's resolve to uncover the truth. "Someone's trying to scare us off," she told Dr. Helsrit, showing him the message. "Which means we're on the right track." With renewed determination, they expanded their investigation, tapping into the station's underutilized surveillance capabilities and reaching out to trusted contacts within other species delegations on Echo 7. What began as a scientific endeavor now morphed into a full-blown investigation, spanning multiple facets of the station's operations. Their efforts paid off when they traced the encrypted message back to a low-ranking technician with close ties to a high-ranking officer within the Military Research Division. This link provided them with the leverage they needed to delve deeper into the network of individuals involved in the serum's clandestine distribution. As pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Ilara and Dr. Helsrit prepared for the possibility of exposing a conspiracy that could shake the foundational trust between the allied species working together on Echo 7. Their next step was critical and required both caution and courage as they planned to confront those implicated with their findings. The alliance they had formed with Dr. Jensen would be tested as they moved forward. Their actions could either cement a partnership based on mutual trust and integrity, or plunge them into a deeper web of deceit and danger. As the station orbited silently through the void of space, its inhabitants were oblivious to the storm brewing within, one that could alter the course of their fragile alliance forever. The atmosphere aboard Echo 7 had shifted palpably, as Ilara, Dr. Helsrit, and Dr. Jensen convened in a secluded sector of the research station. The sterile white of the walls contrasted sharply with the gravity of their meeting. They laid out the intricate web of data and communications they had uncovered, each line and dot forming a picture of deception deep within the military's experimental programs. "Here's the connection between the low-ranking technician and the high officer," Ilara explained, pointing to the flowchart they projected on the screen. "It's clear they used their positions to bypass standard protocols, enabling the unauthorized transfer of the serum." Dr. Jensen reviewed the evidence, his expression hardening with each piece of the puzzle. "This goes up to high-ranking officials," he acknowledged, his tone grave. "We need to be extremely careful how we proceed. Exposing this without proper backup could be dangerous." They decided to gather more concrete proof before taking their findings public. Ilara suggested a covert operation to access the mainframe directly connected to the military's secure channels. "If we can get in, we might be able to intercept communications that give us the direct evidence we need to expose this whole operation without dispute." Dr. Helsrit, while cautious, agreed. "We'll need a distraction, something to draw attention away from the mainframe access point while we extract the data." The plan was set into motion with meticulous care. Dr. Jensen arranged for a routine drill that would engage most of the station's personnel, providing Ilara and a small team the cover they needed to approach the mainframe. As the drill commenced, sirens wailed subtly, and the crew members moved to their designated stations. Ilara, equipped with a stealth-modified suit, navigated the labyrinth of corridors leading to the server room. The air was thick with tension, each step bringing her closer to either a breakthrough or a potential trap. Inside the server room, Ilara worked swiftly, her fingers flying over the holographic interface as she bypassed security protocols with codes Dr. Jensen had reluctantly provided. Data streamed across the screen, transmissions, logs, encrypted files, all funneling into their secure device. Suddenly, an alert blared from the console. They had been detected. "We need to move, now!" Ilara whispered into her comms, urging her team to expedite their escape. They retreated just as security forces converged on the server room, their exit as narrow as the data margins they had managed to steal. Back in their makeshift command center, the team analyzed the intercepted communications. The files were a goldmine, revealing not just the extent of the unauthorized experiments, but also plans to expand them to other stations and populations. Dr. Jensen, witnessing the damning evidence against his own organization, felt a mix of betrayal and resolve. "We'll need to present this to the Interstellar Council. They must see what's been done here." Ilara prepared the report, her narrative clear and compelling. She included every piece of evidence, every intercepted communication, and a detailed account of their findings. The document was more than just a report. It was an indictment of a betrayal that went beyond Echo 7, a warning of what unchecked power could lead to in the wrong hands. As they transmitted the report to the Council, Ilara felt the weight of their actions. They were challenging powerful figures, and the repercussions would be significant. But as she looked around at her team, united in their commitment to truth and integrity, she knew they had done the only thing they could. Now, they waited. The silence of space around Echo 7 seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the Council's response and the ripple effects it would send across galaxies. The conspiracy was laid bare, but the battle for justice had just begun. The response from the Interstellar Council was swift, convening an emergency session that was broadcast across multiple systems, ensuring transparency and maintaining public trust. Ilara, Dr. Helsrit, and Dr. Jensen were summoned to testify, their evidence presented in stark, unflinching detail before the galaxy's representatives. The chamber of the Council was a vast arena of light and sound, where voices of numerous species intermingled, echoing off crystalline walls. Each member of the Council, a delegate from their respective systems, listened intently as Ilara presented the intercepted communications and data logs. Her voice was steady, her resolve clear, even as the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on her. As you can see, this unauthorized project not only violated ethical standards, but also endangered lives across species, she stated, the evidence displayed in high resolution above her. The room filled with murmurs, the air charged with tension and disbelief. Dr. Jensen stood by her side, adding his voice to hers. This was done without the knowledge of the broader military command. We ask the Council for guidance on how to rectify these breaches of trust and ensure they are not repeated. The debate that followed was intense. Some delegates expressed outrage, others concern for the implications of such technology. Questions were raised about the oversight of scientific research and military projects, about the balance between security and ethical conduct. After hours of discussion, the Council decided. The project was to be terminated immediately, with a full audit of all military research protocols. Those directly involved in the unauthorized experiments were to be held accountable, facing sanctions or removal from their positions. Furthermore, the Council issued a directive to establish a new oversight committee, one that would include members of various species, including Veskari representatives. Ilara was invited to join as a chief consultant, a role that would leverage her experience and insight. As the Council session adjourned, news of the decision spread quickly. The repercussions were immediate and far-reaching, sparking debates and discussions on stations and worlds across the galaxy. Back on Echo 7, the mood was somber yet hopeful. Ilara and her team felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. They had exposed a dangerous path, but in doing so, they had perhaps prevented a darker future. In the quiet aftermath, Ilara looked out at the stars from the observation deck. Dr. Helsrit joined her, his presence a silent support. "What now?" he asked, gazing into the endless expanse. "Now, we build," Ilara replied, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "We make sure this never happens again. We ensure that science serves, not endangers, the common good." They stood together, watching as a distant star flickered brightly against the dark canvas of space. The journey had been arduous, the battle hard-fought, but the horizon was now a bit brighter. Echo 7 continued its orbit, a beacon of cooperation and learning, its mission renewed by the vigilance and courage of those willing to stand for truth. In the vast, often unpredictable expanse of space, integrity remained the most valuable currency,